So if you've read and understand my books, this really goes to the essence of my main message is that we all already have what we need. We all already have what we need spiritually, because there is no spiritually, there's just this. This is what we've got. Anything else is like a cooked up fantasy. What we really have is this group in this room sitting here now with the minds and bodies that we have here, and that's all we've got to work with. And John says I'm like Toto, but I think I'm not quite as gentle as Toto. Because if I get started on some of these gurus and their techniques, some people can think it's pretty harsh. In fact, I've had some feedback from people like that who believe that they have this wonderful person who has deep insight into the universe and has meditated for many years and now has higher reasoning or whatever the excuse is, and they can tell you what's real and what isn't. This isn't real. This other thing is real. God is real. I see it the other way around. This is real, and God is an idea that we have cooked up to cover our asses because we don't want death to be the end. We want someone there to welcome us. It could be Jesus in heaven, it could be Brahman, whatever it is, doesn't really matter because it's not here now. Now, if someone here is religious in a deep way and says, well, God is here now, what it is this love I feel for the earth, okay, I can get with that. But that's not going to rescue you when the end comes, and that's the point. If you call it God because you love all this and you're in awe of it, as Tripp was saying, yes, I don't call that God. I don't call my awe God, and I don't think it comes from elsewhere. I think this awe is what happens when a human nervous system looks out through eyes and hears with ears and perceives this universe of flowers and chickadees and everything else. And I'm made unhappy when I see so many of my fellow men and women sitting at the feet of some preacher, whether it be a Hindu-style preacher or an American preacher or whatever, and imagining that those words refer to some reality. I really don't think they do at all. I think it's all bullshit, nonsense. And that's my point. If we can wipe our minds clear of all that received knowledge, all of it, everything that you've ever heard about God, meditation, whatever it is, it's all getting in the way of a clear vision, which I claim to have. So I'm speaking personally. This is not some theory of mine. I'm telling you that my mind is free and clear of all of that, all of those metaphysical explanations. They mean nothing. They're all chit-chat, and they were invented back in the days when there was no science. And so when thunder and lightning came, there had to be an explanation for it. After all, these people had little shelter. They were there on the African steppes, and the world was a very harsh place. Large animals could come and grab you, and these explanations had to be invented. We in the Western world take the inventions of a bunch of desert people near Jerusalem who could barely keep their shit together, and yet somehow their view of the universe is meaningful to Western humans. It's really, I must say, amazing to me that all this obeisance is constantly paid to it, and people are willing to give vast sums of money to build their temples and churches and all the rest of it. It's bizarre. But in saying that, I'm not saying that it doesn't have to be here. I know very well that it has to be here. I just hope it doesn't have to be there for you and me. It has to be there because the majority of human beings aren't like those of us in this room here who have thought deeply about these matters, read books on the subject, and question all of this. There's a vast slice of humanity that doesn't want to question. They want to be put to sleep by attractive fictions and promises of personal fulfillment and self-improvement. And they want that. They want to be hypnotized. It's exactly what they want. So they want someone, not me, I can't fill this role, but they want someone to sit in the chair and tell them that Brahman is the source of your intelligence. And until you know that, you will always just be disturbed as a human. But as soon as you know that, all your problems go away. Pay me. Pay me for telling you that. Meanwhile, you have the wish-fulfilling gem in your own heart, I say. All you have to do is care for other people and everything will melt. It really will. So it's yours. They locate it and they talk about it and sell it back to you as if you needed them in order to find this. But you don't need them to find this, I say. You don't need me to find it. You don't need my books to find it. You don't need anybody to find it. Any preacher. Don't need that. You need to be quiet and silent for a short time every day and count your blessings and find a way to offer help to people who need it. I say, this is my confession. I don't ask you to believe me or take it on face value, just the way I feel. In my experience, that's all it takes. There's nothing more needed. So when John talks about critter love, there's nothing more needed for me to be really happy in the morning than to find this donkey waiting for me outside, really wants me to appear, and comes over to me, and we embrace. In that moment, I want nothing, nothing. And what I'm telling you also about myself, let me take a short detour. I realize that it's entirely audacious to speak this way. I do know that. This is rather bizarre for someone to say, I'm wide awake in the way that these historical figures that you adore, I don't know if you adore them, but these adored figures in the books, Ramana Maharshi or whatever, that's me. But not in the 20th century with a Hindu slant on everything and a Hindu programming. I don't have that. I've got the Amerikansky programming, which is scientific and materialist in a good way. One of the things that the spiritual teachers do is they immediately try to tell you that materialism is no good. And by the way, stop thinking. Your mind is trouble. Your mind is your enemy. I mentioned names the first few days, but I'm not going to do that hopefully anymore. But if you have some hero like that who tries to tell you your thoughts are the problem. No, they're not the problem. They're all you have to deal with the complexities of life. Would you really want to be stupid and content? What if that choice were offered to you, I wonder? What if someone said, yes, I know you suffer and all that emotionally and all of that, but take this pill and you will become a happy idiot. No more problems. I wouldn't take that pill. Not at all. I think that a human life is the highest form of life on this planet. We get to do all the procreation and all the rest of it that John was discussing, participate in this miracle of sex, whether it's for procreation or not. The fact that these feelings belong to us as mammals, we get to experience that, and yet also know worlds that the animals cannot know because they don't have any science. We can participate in animal existence, which is both pleasurable and painful. I admit that. I broke my back a few months ago. It's only 2 weeks that I'm walking around. 4 months staring at the ceiling, absolutely. And yet I still want to be here. More than ever, really. And so if I have anything to convey, I'm going to go back to that little cul-de-sac I was in. See, now you see why you might want to ask questions. Otherwise, if there aren't any, I'm just going to rap. I'm good at it and enjoy it. But in the cul-de-sac, I was saying, I understand it's audacious for me to say I'm as awake as whomever you think was awake. And this is what I'm saying. So you can go back and read the reports of what someone apparently said in the 20th century and get all caught up in that and the interpretations of that. And but those people are already dead and buried, and I'm here to answer questions, and I'm totally willing to do it. But it's audacious to speak this way. I get that. And I was silent for 20 years after my awakening. I said nothing to anyone about it, not word one. I only began to speak about it partially on the urging of John Troy here. He had me come to North Carolina to attend one of his gatherings, and it was there that people were open to, so I kind of ventured into discussing this and saw that there was some acceptance of it. So that was very important. I wouldn't be here now. John found me, we discovered one another on the radio. John used to have a radio program called Wisdom's Soft Whisper, and it was beautiful. He would interview people who were sage-like, I guess was your criterion in those days. Am I right?
A lot of wannabes.
A lot of wannabes, yeah. So this is, right. So, and then when we talked, I was not a wannabe, am I right? Yeah, so John discovered me on the radio, and we had a wonderful interview. And then in those days, he did a gathering once a year for his group of friends, where John, being so generous, would rent a big house somewhere beautiful and invite all his friends to be there for a week. And everybody would cook and drink and schmooze and laugh. And John likes Irish music, so he has these friends who play it, and they would come and do that too. It's very beautiful. So the first one was high in the mountains of North Carolina, a place called Twickenham. And the place where we lived was some rich man's paradise with a playroom in the basement and a hot tub, and in the middle of this woods. And John had scheduled that just for the time of the autumn leaves. We arrived, and it was a total enchantment. In fact, there's a photograph of me that surfaced recently from that time, and I just look enchanted. And that's what I'm talking about, Trip, when you mention awe. Yeah, I'm standing there, and there's this outlook. If you have enough nerve, you can walk out onto this rock and look into this vast distance of mountains, and they're all colored, every color, amazing, amazing. So I did not speak about this until about 9 years ago, and then I began doing it partly because of John, and then on the urging of my now dear departed friend, Dr. Robert Hall, who is a Buddhist teacher and came here 19 years ago. We met and just hit it off right away, and he began to urge me to go public. So eventually I did, and wasn't that good at it at first. said some things that I now no longer would say. But at this moment, I feel completely clear. And the reason, my intention in speaking is not to make myself important, or it's not to earn a living, because as you know, this is a freebie, which is the necessary condition actually for total honesty, because if you're making a buck at it, you don't really want to offend people, and you want to make sure there's plenty of space for their fantasies and not tell them their fantasies are holding them back. That's not the best idea. But I began to speak about this because I realized that people are seeking awakening. That's the idea of a lot of these spiritual practices and gurus. The promise is, if you follow this path assiduously enough, with enough devotion, you eventually will awaken. And what I'm saying is, there is no future that we know of. When it arrives, it will arrive as the present, not as the future. And in that present, everything will be just as it is now. You will be awake just as you are now, and all you have to do is notice it. Of course we're awake. The human mind is amazing. It's so much more amazing than some promise out of a spiritual guru's mouth about what you may attain later if you believe what he's saying, and pay me also, and come back next year and pay me again. Well, boy, if it takes more than one sitting, or maybe a 10-day sitting, but if it takes any more than that, you shouldn't really need to come back next year. Although I hope you do, because I'm enjoying this. But my point is, this is very simple, and it should be easy to hear this if you can accept it and just be there with it. What I'm confessing is I'm awake and I'm no different from you. No different. We're all in the same boat. We all have a deep understanding. We all do. Everyone in this room, I mean, not every human. There's a lot of very confused humans. American politics is completely discombobulated at this point, in my opinion. And it's being supported by the people who don't understand this kind of talk. If they did, they would not act that way, I say. But the thing that I have to confess is that when I look out at you all, I don't see anything different from what I see when I look into my own self. I see people who are completely alive and wake up in the morning and see this world the same way I do and see beauty in it. It's hard to come to a place like this anyway and not find it beautiful, my God. And when you get a chance to walk around in these streets, I think you'll see that many, many people in this town are very beautiful. This town is still innocent, not like New York or London, where you have to be kind of on the qui-vive to survive at all, and there are many dangers. This is a place that's not filled with many dangers, and you don't have to really hustle to survive here. And so there's an essential innocence, which is one of the things that's kept me here for 25 years. So I hope I have now stressed you out all enough so that you'll ask a question, so I don't have to fill these 3 hours with chit-chat.
People want to be happy. That's the problem, right? Like, a lot of people are not happy. So we each think that we're going to find happiness in a certain way. So this awakening, this is like, okay, I want to be awakened because I want to be happy. So do you agree that in a way that's what people want? They think that when you're awake, you're going to be always happy. But I don't think that's true, but in a different kind of happy, you know?
So there's a problem with the word happy.
Yeah,
yes?
That's what it is.
So how would you characterize that problem?
So I'm just saying everyone has a different way of finding this happiness. Like, I know I was seeking enlightenment. I thought that was eternal happiness. So I wanted that. Why not? I thought it was really true. But then I saw all the, I realized it's just this. Like, I've always been happy, but never really realized it. That, you know what I mean?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
So, I often ask people this question: what do you want? Given that John spoke about impermanence, and I think we all must accept that everything is impermanent. It's all going down with the flood. Those of us who are old enough to have physical elements that can't really improve, we must admit that gradually the thing will wind down into old age, illness, and death, as the Buddha put it. So I'm putting it the same way. It doesn't make me a Buddha, but at least we agree on that. There's no soul that's going to continue.
Right.
Buddhism doesn't have souls.
It's because we've been brainwashed, let's say, when we were children, to believe in this stuff.
Very often that's,
So,
yes.
And we really believe it because we were kids.
So I asked this question: what do you want?
I just want to be as I am. That's how I feel now.
Beautiful. Because, see, if I want happiness, that's a confession that this moment is insufficient. I want something else that's promised to me if I do such and such. Correct my thinking or sit in a certain posture or whatever it is.
But what I'm saying is I had to go through all this searching to decondition myself to then now see the truth. So unfortunately, but whatever, I'm not going to say it was unfortunate. It just was fine. It was my path.
So my friend John is really a great wordsmith. You may have gotten a feeling for some of that when he was speaking before. What he says about that is the remedy is exhausting the remedies. The remedy is exhausting the remedies. So if you are someone who has tried out a few of these things, which I assume most of us here, if not all of us here in the room have, in one way or another, then perhaps you've come to the end of the remedies and we can just all be here.
For me, your book was the last one.
The book?
Yeah.
Yes,
the 4
the
T's.
book did it. Yeah.
It summed everything up.
Yeah.
My 10 years of seeking, or whatever. So
my friend
great.
Robert Hall, who convinced me that I should speak out, he was the first reader of the 10,000 Things. And he loved it. It was such a great hit for me because I admired this man very much for his erudition and honesty and his giving heart. He would sit there every Sunday, regardless of how he felt personally, and sit there before a room full of Buddhist students and practitioners and speak from the heart. Beautiful cat. He's gone now, but I miss him. Yes. So he was the first reader. And he said, I went to see him. He'd had the book and he'd read it. I went to see him. I said, what did you think? He said, this is destined to become a spiritual classic. And I said, Robert, you know, you love me. I'm going to take that with a grain of salt. And I did. I took it. I poured salt all over it because I don't like ego trips. I don't find that comfortable at all. Far from it. It's painful, and you pay for it a lot afterwards. You say, my God, what an idiot. How could I have, you know, whatever it may be. And so he turned out to be right, because what you're telling me, I've heard that from, I would say now, I don't know how many people, dozens or hundreds, I've lost track, who have told me not the exact same thing, something similar about that book. Gee, this really pulled the rug out, this upset the apple cart, this capsized my boat, this was the last book I'm going to read on spirituality, I get it. Or people will say, these are the same thoughts I always have, but feared to voice them. So reading that made me feel so confident that it was okay to think this way. And so, although I do find a personal cost in sitting here doing this, it's a bit embarrassing, frankly. I'm still willing to do it because I now believe in that book, and I believe in the second book a lot too. I haven't gotten so much feedback from it yet because it's recent and it's a very long book. It takes a while to read it. But so it's not myself that I'm promoting here, but it is the words in those two books that I hope people will read. And if they have questions, I take questions on my Facebook page. So if anyone's reading these books and wants to have a discussion about it, you could go to the 10,000 Things book page on Facebook, and if you ask a question, I will reply. This is for the video people. Obviously, people in the room, you'll ask the questions now and maybe over dinner also. So are there any questions about what I've written? I've said so many things.
I've read your book, and I have a little bit of a hard time discussing it with other people. And one of the big is my wife. She's probably never read any kind of book on spirituality or religion, and we've been married just about 50 years. And so one of the concepts that you have in the book is the freedom to choose. And she said, I chose you 50 years ago. And I said, according to Robert, you didn't. So, and I can't explain, she insists that she chose me. And I don't have the right words to explain to her that we really don't get to choose. Life just flows.
Oh, I can't wait to hear you.
I'll put on your mask and sing the serenade. Yeah, that's, what does that come from? That's a literature. Cyrano de Bergerac, thank you. I look around the room when I speak because I need to understand if I'm out on a limb or I have a few other birds out there with me. And when I regarded Joan's face, I saw that she was taking the things in that I was saying without too much difficulty. Am I right? Okay.
Thank God.
Yes, thank God. This isn't one of those things where you have to sit there because your husband wants to be spiritual or whatever, am I right? Yeah. I totally get that. I'm about as down to earth as a man could be.
I sense what you're doing.
I'm right down there with it. So I have kids and grandkids myself. I'm an ordinary guy, really, very ordinary. Okay, no choice. This is the way I sell it. I was born without asking to be born. You agree with that? There is a line of thought that says souls are waiting to get a fresh body and God will, okay, you get to be, you're not there. Beautiful. So I didn't ask for this body. This is the body I got. I'm pretty happy with it, but frankly, it took me about 25 years to really be okay with it. Totally okay. Maybe more. To see my own beauty. Not the beauty that a leading man has, which is part of the problem. And not the body of a Greek statue, certainly not, which you would want. Maybe not the equipment of one of the fantasy characters in the magazines also, but this is a body and it works pretty well, and my face is not off-putting exactly, and I have a body that's nice enough and gets around. Girls have always liked me, so There we are. It's good enough. That's the body I was born in, and it was not a choice. Okay. Equally, the brain. Some people are born with quite a bit of deficiency and really can't learn to read. That's just a fact. Other people are Einstein. I'm somewhere on that curve, not at either end. But I think a little more toward the Einstein part of it than average, which I think is already a great blessing. But I didn't choose it. I could have been dealt any one of those cards. I could have be an atomic physicist if that's what came up in the deck, or I could be going to trade school and failing at it, if that's the card that popped out of the deck. This is really important to understand. I did not choose this body-mind. It appeared. I did not choose the historical era of my birth, which has a tremendous influence on us. As we boomers know, when we see the idiocy of our Gen Z, are we up to, who think that they have to be safe all the time, otherwise the world will melt down. That's not my fault. I raised my kids pretty much free range. But we were discussing this the other day. When I was 6, that's when I was allowed to come home from school, dump my stuff in the kitchen, and go out until dark. And the only restriction was be back before dark. I'm 6 years old when I'm doing this. And I meet up with my friends, and we're doing all kinds of strange shit, really risky behavior, and some kids get hurt. And we're also having fights and bullying one another and working out what's fair and what isn't, and disputing it and yelling and going off and crying and all the rest of it without any adult there to moderate the situation. So by the time we get to college, we are not looking for a safe space. We went there to be unsafe, and that's just what we did. We were unsafe sexually, we were unsafe in the books that we read, the people that we listened to, maybe the drugs we experimented with, all of this. We wanted to be shaken up. And we would never have thought of reporting one of our professors because some idea that he came up with was upsetting. And now I'm triggered. And it was a microaggression, my God. And I have to be with my friends and no white men allowed in the room because just seeing them is a microaggression. It's tragic. This is tragic. Okay, well, I did not choose this vigor. I was fortunately born in 1945 when kids were raised in still a reasonable way. I think the average age now when a child is allowed to be completely alone is either 12 or 13. This is absurd. 12 and 13 is when you begin to mess around with sex, not when you're allowed to walk down to the corner store without mom watching you. Okay, so the people born in this historical era who are being helicopter parented to the extent that this one woman was fired from her job. No, she was just denied advancement in her corporation. And her mom called up the human resources person to dispute it. My daughter is, et cetera. Okay, this is mania. Okay, so you didn't choose that. I did not choose to be one of these kids that went skating on the pond with ice skates, and we had to decide if it was enough to bear our weight. Mommy and Daddy didn't come down there and test the ice, And sometimes someone fell in, and then the rest of us had to do whatever we could to get him out. This is true. Okay. We used to have serious fights also. I mean, punching and throwing things and all of that, and you'd go home with a bloody nose and everything, and Mom would patch it up. But she wouldn't tell you stay home now so that doesn't happen again. So I've gone off on that tangent because it's something that I feel acutely right now. I feel it super acutely because I'm a great admirer of ideas, and there are ideas now that are being repressed and suppressed because the people who write these books and have teaching positions or need a grant to write the next book or study the next thing, they are being forced into silence, because if they speak their mind, there'll be the call to the dean's office, or the publisher will say, no, you write something else, this one won't make it, etc. And to me, I'm very pained by that. I'm aggrieved by it. And that's why I'm on that little tangent about how the universities are fucking up entirely. They're just no fucking good. No good at all. When the faculty is afraid of the students, you don't have a university anymore. You have a babysitting situation, and the babysitters better not fuck up, otherwise they're out. And they put in babysitters who are better at changing diapers. So that's what we got in the universities. And I feel it because I like learning and education very much. It's important to me. But that's a tangent. Get to the picture, big picture here. So you didn't choose the way you were raised. That happened. Did you choose the way you were raised?
Did I influence the way
How would you have chosen that?
I think I influenced how I was raised.
You did
Does
choose?
that make sense? I didn't say choose.
Did not choose.
I influenced.
You influenced the way you were raised.
Yes.
Yes, there is a feedback loop with the parents. I agree with that.
Okay.
Not all parents, but sensitive parents will catch on to messages. Okay, so that's a good point.
Okay.
So let's stick a pin in that. We've got that one to deal with. We'll deal with it. You did not choose the neighborhood that you grew up in. That was your parents' choice.
Okay.
Or maybe you told them, I'm not happy here, I want to live in Florida. No, you didn't get that. You get to do that one. They weren't that understanding. Okay. So you didn't choose that. When you went to school, you didn't choose the kids in your kindergarten class. Those were the kids that were in the class. And yet those were the kids you spent the whole year with, being influenced by their little minds, whatever was, okay. So you didn't choose that. And so you didn't choose your body, you didn't choose your mind, you didn't choose your parents. You didn't choose the neighborhood you grew up in, the historical time, we went through that, didn't choose that. Didn't choose the neighborhood, didn't choose the classmates, didn't choose your teachers. You weren't given that power.
I chose my friends.
Chose your friends. Okay, that's right. You did choose your friends. And on what basis did you make that choice?
That's a tough one. I don't know. They liked me back. They liked me back.
Yes. So that is not a choice. You can't choose who likes you back.
Okay.
What it is you find someone attractive. You approach in one way or another, or many ways. You approach that person if you have the nerve, and then you have to prepare to have your heart broken, because that person might say, you go sit at the table with the, this is the A table over here. You go sit with the other girls over there, the ones who aren't beautiful. I don't mean this about you. I'm talking about just in general. Everything's broken into cliques, and we don't choose the clique that we're in. That's a group mind. The attractive girls and the ones who parents have money so they can dress accordingly to the proper fashions and everything, they get to sit over here, and that's the table that the boys like to walk past and go like this and that. None of this is chosen any more than the activities of barnyard animals are chosen by the animals. This is the mating game, and it starts young, and it's not chosen. I didn't choose to be heterosexual. I just am. I always have been. I like to look up skirts when I was 6 years old. It was thrilling. And I have gay friends that will tell you, I like to look elsewhere. That's not where I, you know. And my gay friends love football because they can watch the players' butts in those tight pants. Truly. And maybe some women do too, for all I know. Or maybe they're just forced to watch it because that's what the husband has on TV. Okay, so I am not saying that there's no choice at all. I've never said that. But what I have said is the scope of choice is much smaller than we really think.